Welcome to Good Morning Outdoors, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the outdoor hospitality industry. From campgrounds and RV parks to glamping, outdoor resorts, adventure travel, and ecotourism, we'll be discussing all things outdoor travel and hospitality, so join us on Good Morning Outdoors every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, Alex. Good morning.
Hey. So, Matt, we did an on-site last week that I think a lot of people loved and had a really great feedback. You were actually still on site at the campground, but we've got some new updates that have happened since then. I know we teased some different lodging updates happening at Covered Bridge, and obviously, we're heading right into next week, which is kind of I would say the second half, big half of the season with 4th of July. Obviously, it's a huge holiday, something we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. Close to 7 million Americans tend to go camping during this holiday, so definitely a big one. Before we dive into today's news, why don't we start with that update on everything that you've been doing since then, focused on marketing, all the new lodging, just give folks an update as to where things stand.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple weeks at Covered Bridge campsite. I'm actually in a co-working space, wonderful little place called Barn Fox in the town of Livingston Manor. That's, it's been a great resource. Such an awesome little town. We've got 15 minutes from our campground that has great shops and restaurants and resources. So it's been a really good opportunity to kind of meet people in the community, even some collaborators on some marketing initiatives and events and stuff. So that's been really cool. So that's where I'm joining from today. And it started with last week, which we teased. The Jupe tents did arrive. We are close. We're working through some punch list items. We're going to be starting a friends and family sort of soft launch for those to work out the kinks and do some testing and get some feedback from some people we know that won't bash us on Google and Airbnb with 1-star reviews. Not that I think that would happen, but we're trying to be super deliberate about it. It's a new thing. We've kind of got an evolving campsite, and there's always some risks there as we attract new eyes and new people. We have just such a high concentration of return guests, which is awesome. It's a testament to our business, but it's kind of a double-edged sword in that, when your revenue is concentrated with repeat customers and then you start bringing new people in, it's the expectations are different. It's just a whole different ballgame. So we're trying to be very deliberate about that and strategic and careful, because those online reviews, they can make or break you, and that's where we're at. So yeah, it's been a week of getting Jupes ready and tweaking some things and getting some parts in and some materials and different things. And then it quickly transitioned into some really fun marketing things. As I've teased a few times, I'm diving deep into the world of video. It's not my area of expertise, but so we had a really awesome. We've had a few film crews on site. Actually, we had a wonderful film crew come up called Are We There Yet Films. Shout out to the Are We There Yet team. They documented the construction assembly, I should say, of the Jupes. Battled some surprise rough weather on Sunday, but they were troopers about it, and so that was a lot of fun. So we'll have some really cool video to share with these Jupe tents going up. I'm super excited about that. And then 2 nights ago, we had the Zook Cabins team on site, because we have a Zook A-frame on site that does really well. Really cool park model RV unit that's feels more like a house. It's 13 feet wide and 30 feet long, and has a really wonderful big glass front in the A-frame, view of the creek. It's awesome. So I've been coordinating with them for a while to come on site. They wanted me to shoot a testimonial video. That was cool. We cooked some steaks over a Brio fire pit. So that was pretty awesome. Did a little tour and interview. And now we've got our social media manager. Shout out to Gabby at Mountain Marketing, who's done a great job. It's kind of funny. We stopped in at a local retail store, an outdoor kind of outfitter and apparel and kind of lifestyle and camping gear store in town. I've been chasing them to do a collaboration, and I said, we're filming some primitive tent camping content. So we got a tent, we got a hammock, we got a whole setup, and got a chance to meet the owner. And he said, I've been following you guys on social media. You're doing such a great job. And I said, thanks. Gabby's going to ask me for a raise now. We were out at a restaurant when the Jupe guys were in town. We were over at a restaurant in the next town over in Roscoe, and the owner of that restaurant, really awesome place called The Junction in Roscoe, that if you're in the New York City area, definitely check it out. Fantastic restaurant, awesome bar. And the owner of The Junction also said, he said, wow, I've noticed you guys have really stepped up your game on social. So within a couple of days, got some kind of affirmation that we're doing some things right. It's a slow build, but people are noticing in the community, which feels great. So long-winded kind of intro there, but we got a lot going on, and we love to share it with everybody. So,
and Matt, it sounds like, speaking of sort of another partner or business in the industry, that you've been talking about the tech stack at the campground as well for a while. Sounds
yes.
like there may be a new partner there, or at least a good chance to get to see what's happening in the world of tech and things that are happening. I know we've also teased this over the last couple of weeks. So do you want to give folks an update on that?
Yeah,
as well?
I'll preface it with saying, and I'm really interested to get your take on this, Alex, in particular, because you have a lot more experience with all the different systems. So I'll wrap it up quickly, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. But so I've used a few different software systems. I'm not, we're not bashing anyone here by any means. So I think we'll both kind of just leave it at that. We've used probably all of them, or at least, I've used probably 3 or 4 of the top providers, and you and I have actually worked on a fun project of documenting all of the different providers, and it was kind of crazy to see that there was something like 45 different software providers in the market, which is kind of astounding for such a niche little market. But anyway, I demoed Newbook a long time ago and was very impressed, but it just wasn't in the budget. And they probably heard that a lot because they came out with this Newbook Essentials, which I think we talked about a few weeks ago, that it's just a per reservation pricing model. There's no base software fee. So they've essentially gotten rid of the objection, right? I don't think anybody's objecting to purchasing Newbook for lack of features or integrations, or right. The main, and I said this right to the guys, to Blake and Montana. Shout out to Blake and Montana at Newbook. I said, I'm scared for everybody else in the market for you guys, because you guys took that one objection and you squashed it, right? Nobody can now say, it's switching costs and brain damage and all that stuff. Like, I will also preface this with saying that purchasing SaaS, software as a service, is one of my least favorite things to do, right? Like, and Newbook is all great people, and all of these software providers are all great people. Nobody's for the most part out there fabricating things or lying or whatever, but like,
but you come from this world too, and understand, the frustration from the other side,
right? Like, a salesperson sells the software. Their job is to represent it in a positive light. There's problems with every software out there. No software solution is perfect. Support is
right. Sales is always independent from the support and the
Yeah.
engineering teams.
right.
So the promises on new features and product support time
Right.
and wait time, as you said, it's I think can be overblown just to sell the product.
Right. And so we'll get to the meat and potatoes here in a second, but support has always been my other and it's everybody's pain point with SaaS is just you submit the ticket, you wait, it maybe doesn't even get solved on the first ticket, and it's just you chat, you call, you get bounced around to different support, team members, and it's just a frustrating experience. So, but anyway, another interesting tidbit I got from a conversation with Blake Burris over there. So Blake is a great contact. I mean, he sells Newbook, so he'll tell you all about Newbook, but he's out there in the market. He's meeting everybody. He's traveling to the properties that are Newbook customers and customers of other properties. And he's a resource, right? He knows the industry. He knows all the other software providers. Before he moves to sell you, he's just going to shoot you straight and tell you what they can do, tell you what he sees from other people, what other owners and operators are seeing in the market. So huge fan of Blake over there. An interesting, awesome tidbit that I got from him is that Newbook is hiring people to work customer success that have industry operating experience. So that was music to my ears, right? Like I can now talk to somebody who's operated a property if I'm a Newbook customer. So long story short, I got the Newbook Essentials demo. The main pain point for me in our transformation of Covered Bridge Campsite is Airbnb integration. Like for the most part, a lot of the softwares do the same type of things. The top 4 or 5, you're going to have a relatively similar experience to some degree, but I've had a very incredibly difficult experience kind of ramping up our presence on Airbnb with several units. The great part about Newbook, which was really compelling for me, was a internal channel manager, which I haven't seen. I don't know. Do you know of any other providers that have an internal channel manager?
Not really in our space unless it's custom built or something
Right.
that was, built for that location.
Right.
Usually it's not open to the public and for sale like Newbook has.
Right. So that's what really kind of sucked me in, was just all the pain I've been experiencing, integrating, with like middleware and third party integration solutions. And, I submit a ticket to my software provider, who then submits a ticket to the middleware software provider. And then before you know it, it takes 2 to 3 weeks to even hear back on your ticket. And it's just not a scalable, sustainable way of doing things. So, I've got, looks like we're moving forward with Newbook. Just got to check some boxes, but I'm excited. I'm excited, but I'm not, because, I'm excited for all the things in Newbook, but I've got a ton of stuff on my plate, and a software switch is always kind of a pain, but I've got faith that they're gonna give me the resources I need to make it as painless as possible. So off we go.
Yeah, that tech shift is difficult, and as you said, there are real switching costs involved, even if you don't see them initially. But who knows, Matt? Maybe we can even do a little bit of a deep dive on some of the reservation systems here coming up. A lot to talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a whisper to Newbook. We are looking for sponsors. So
there you go.
If hey,
they'd be a great one.
Yeah, hit us up.
Well said. Yeah, on that front, Matt, why don't you say we dive into today's show? I know we've got some cool stories to talk about, some of which will tie into some stuff that you brought up during the intro today. But
Yeah.
as you mentioned, maybe a little bit of a longer intro than we usually do, but you've got a lot happening on and a lot of projects in the works. And I know people appreciate the update and hearing and seeing everything that's going on. But with that, speaking of really a key feature that a lot of reservation systems have begun to kind of integrate and build into their tech uses, our first story comes out of Skiff today. The Agoda CEO talked and had a pretty good article, I thought, on loyalty programs. And obviously, this has been something that reservation systems have been adding, particularly for independent mom and pop parks, to spin up their own loyalty program in a way, and to really highlight this as an important part of the customer journey and bring this to the independent operators in our industry. And so, Matt, for people who don't know, I'll give some brief context and background and then open this up for discussion between us. Agoda is kind of that third party travel agency. So very, similar model to an Expedia or a booking.com or something like that. They're trying to pull inventory from a number of providers, market it to their customer base, and have people book through their platform. Right. And their CEO, Omri, talked a lot about in this article how price is really the best loyalty factor, and something that I really couldn't agree with, more. I think it is important to have loyalty programs that offer, basic tiers where there's a very clear pathway to incentivize the customer to get, you do X action, you're going to get X additional benefit, and you're not making it overly complex for somebody to sign up, to get rewards, and to become a loyal member. Like, you want this to be an easy, frictionless process, and to continue to win their loyalty on price first. Like, people are just going to continue to pay wherever the price is lower, just because they get an extra couple of points for booking with you in your loyalty system. Like, if you're twice the price in the market, like, is that really loyalty? And I think it creates a good conversation and argument around that. And I would, argue similarly that, it probably doesn't. Not to say that somebody won't choose loyalty as their indicator if you're winning with service, like if you're winning with the options that are available. Like, it's not always the lowest cost race to the bottom, but I do think price is an important and competitive part of the mix. Matt, I'll turn this over to you. What do you kind of think and see about this? Obviously, this again ties back into the campground of there isn't really a loyalty system in place because it's you run an independent park, but I would say there is a loyalty system that exists there with people who have been coming for decades, who are love the product, love the service, may indeed love the price, especially if they're coming from a market like New York.
Yeah.
And you've been able to win that loyalty argument.
Yeah, this is a really interesting kind of talking point, because as a consumer, this really resonates with me. From the simplicity aspect of it. It makes me think about, all your credit card options, right? You have all these crazy different points and reward systems. And I have just never felt that it was worth my brain damage to try and understand
just for
this.
the points, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I've always been a cashback guy. And like, I've had this argument with plenty of people, including my wife. My wife is a points, consumer. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We've, had plenty of free flights, and she's kind of showed me that it's actually more value in the points. But even still, I'm like, but that requires me to take a college level course on
and figure out what my point balance
right.
is and how, right. Yeah.
And now I'm just like, no, I log on, I see the cash back, I click redeem, and it comes off my statement. 30 seconds, I'm probably wrong about this, but I'd have to I only have so much headspace and brain space as a consumer, as an operator, all the above. So simplicity always wins for me. As an operator, I'm conflicted about this because my philosophy as an operator has always been the opposite of this. To not, if you're competing on price, that is an absolutely losing proposition in the hospitality business.
I would argue, especially when there's lodging involved in the camping or glamping space, like that's when that, race to the bottom as far as pricing, gets really dangerous really quickly, especially when you have so many other costs in the building, in the cleaning, in the marketing of the unit. If you're paying a third party provider like an Agoda, like there's a lot of those hidden fees that exist there that, that race to the bottom just doesn't benefit you as the operator.
Right. And so, to take it a step further, my philosophy has always been to, differentiate based on a unique setting, a unique offering that nobody else can replicate. And therefore, when you can achieve that, you don't have to compete on price. Yeah, you want to provide good value. And I think there's as an investor, there's another conversation here about, what's your basis in the business? If you're thinking about it like a real estate investor or just purely an investor who's measuring, financial return, one of the most important things there is, what is the basis? What did you buy the business for? What have you invested into the business? And that's, the denominator in how you calculate a lot of your investment returns. So it's super important. And then that drives what price you can charge or what price you have to charge.
Right.
So if you're in a position where your basis is incredible and you can offer an amazing product that's unique and compelling, but also still beat everybody on price and make your return, more power to you. That's everybody's goal. So there's different kind of dynamics here. There's different ways to look at it. Also, I always have reservations about these types of things too, as a consumer, just because I've had bad experiences with the third party, right? Like, I forget what it was, but like, I think one time I rented a hotel room through one of these third parties and like the reservation never made it through. So I show up at the hotel and they're like, wait, who are you? I think I had it happen with a rental car as well. So like, after those experiences, I'm like, oh, okay, it's $20 more to book direct, but I know I'm booking direct. Like, I'll just book direct because the surety of, execution on their side is worth a little bit of a premium in my mind. So conflicted feelings on this one, I'd say.
Yeah, but I think this is such an interesting discussion and such a great article in that, as you said, it's this dynamic between service, between price, between what really is loyalty. I think it is smart for a lot of reservation providers and others to begin to, give the tools to the independent operators in our industry to build the loyalty programs if they want. And I think, people like Newbook and CampSpot and others have finally made it where you may only own one property, but you're actually able to make a real loyalty program with those points. And again, I always like, this is my marketing brain talking, but like, especially if you just have that one location and I'm not going to get additional benefits because of the network that loyalty program is in, and there's kind of those three kind of big networks out there in the camping space, KOA, Jellystone, even Modern America. We've talked about them kind of spinning up their own loyalty program. Those all have multiple locations that you can redeem it at. With this, if you just have the one location, like, you've really got to deliver on service and the tiered values and benefits that provides, because, you're just not going to win on the different number of locations that you're actually able to benefit from as a consumer. So I think it's really smart to continue to add that into the tech stack, continue to make that available to folks. And really great article and discussion by the folks over at Agoda on loyalty and what that means. Our next post here, we talked a little bit about this this festival here in weeks past in Glastonbury. Shout out Leo and Sarah, because we're going over to your side of the pond now, over in the UK. This was an article as quoted in on Yahoo News, talking about this absolutely insane tent setup for their festival. So this, let me just like walk through what this includes, because I think this is just incredibly cool and interesting. And the sticker price on this thing was insane. Now it does include a lot, and I think there's definitely a market for this. But I loved this story because I think it shows the just, I think, extreme price tag glamping can get to when it's experiential and there's other services and other things included. So obviously this is a humongous festival in the UK. Almost 250,000 people visit here every year. And there's this posh tent set up. $29,000 was the sticker price on this. Now that obviously includes your glamping accommodations. There's private swimming pool access, massage services, and even a helicopter ride like into the festival. Again, very experiential. We talked a lot about Airbnb experiences and the ways that, I think folks are really, in this consolidation mindset of combining the lodging with the services and the experiences. I will say this thing looks nice. But Matt, would you pay 29 grand even for all of that kind of stuff that's included? I just think this is, again, an incredible story on, what folks will pay, especially when there's all of that kind of other stuff lumped in. I initially, like, you read the headline and I got like major sticker shock, even after seeing there's a helicopter ride and all the rest of it that is in this package, obviously marketed towards, the ultra rich, if you will. Still a hefty price to pay.
Yeah. It's interesting because we just kind of, at this price point, we just purchase our own pretty cool premium glamping tents. So,
and especially coming off of the last story, talking about the race to the bottom of low price.
Right.
Kind of staying there on, like, would this be considered loyalty? Like, I think so. I think there are probably a lot of people that would book this again, especially if they had an amazing experience.
Right. Hey, yeah, to me, this is all about the experience. It's a pop-up. It's a pretty cool design. I don't know if I've ever seen it. It's like a mix of like a kind of canvas cabin safari tent plus like
it's a little
teepee in the middle.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a little like African and Native American inspired. Is kind of how I got the read on it.
I mean, it's cool. I mean, it doesn't, the amenities and stuff sound like kind of what you'd get at any kind of premium glamping resort. So again, it just ties back to the experience. It's a really big festival in the UK. It's like a Coachella or like a Stagecoach. It's like, it's a status thing of being there. It's for the, the rich and famous. It's not for us peasants,
Right. But what I do think is, one, super cool, obviously, to see glamping even in this format be introduced to people. As in weeks past, we've talked about how, I think finally glamping has moved and become a part of the terminology and vocabulary when we think about higher end lodging options, particularly just getting into traditional hospitality. Like, I think glamping has finally made it. If we look at anything from the outdoor space, I think this only continues to prove it, that there are still really high end versions of this and, this form or fashion at this festival, that it just brings glamping into, I think, a new market that it wasn't before. And the more experiences people have in them that are positive, particularly at the top of the market, I think the more demand there will be for those, particularly in great locations, and it will only continue to grow and continue to spread. So really insane, definitely a cool story, something that we wanted to highlight, but definitely not for me, even with the helicopter ride included. And Matt, we've got a couple stories to wrap up here. We're going to kind of loop back to the RV side of this. I don't want to call this next story a campground story for reasons that we'll talk about here in a moment. But Love's Travel Stops announced the opening of their 100th RV stop. Now, obviously, these locations that Love's have spun up, again, I'm not really calling them a campground because I don't really think that that's the need they fill. A lot of campgrounds have argued that, these stops, may take away business. I know that this was a common objection when Love started rolling this out, But the way I really see this, and Matt, tell me if you kind of agree or disagree with me on this. This is consolidation in the market at its finest. Love's really looked at when, several years ago when they first started this idea to say, look, we obviously sell gasoline. We're a travel stop, particularly for truckers and, larger units and things like this. This is probably the number one segment for a Love's or a Pilot or a Flying J in the recreational leisure market. And obviously big RVs, motorhomes, and the like use a lot of gas. So this is a great customer for Love's, and them looking at the market and saying like, hey, why don't we become the go-to for these gas and go kind of stops for people in between their campground stay, the people making the cross-country road trip, the people who just need to have that quick pullover where they don't want to pay RV park or campground prices. Like I said, they want to kind of gas up and go. And Matt, I really see this as them being probably one of the closest competitors to what, a Harvest Host in the market has come in to try and fill, which is the same kind of thing. You're staying at this, this different destination. Obviously a gas station or a travel stop isn't exactly the greatest of destination. And I think Harvest Host has some cooler product inventory, like a winery or a brewery and things like that. But I think they're both designed to fulfill that need of the in-between stop. You're likely boondocking it, and you're likely staying there because you're in between going from one campground to the next. So Matt, I guess, do you kind of see that the same? And what does this tell you about Love's finally reaching 100 locations? I mean, that is a huge deal. And even if we look at them as far as locations that RVs can stop, I mean, that's now one of the largest consolidated players in the space. Again, not operating campgrounds, but just operating these RV stops all across the country.
Right. I would say that if you're an operator and Love's Travel Stops is taking business from you, then it ties back to our one of our previous
loyalty. Yeah.
And just the pricing thing and the differentiation and the unique offering. If Love's is stealing your business, it means you don't have a unique offering. It means you are competing on price and you don't have anything special to offer. And that's not a shot at Love's. It's a utilitarian kind of offering. I've planned a few longer RV trips and I've never stayed at a Love's, but I've considered it, when it's whatever. It could be a KOA journey. It could just be a roadside RV park, and you look at it and it doesn't have great reviews and it's just a stopover park. That doesn't offer me a good experience. And if it's, keeps my trip more efficient, I'll stay at the Love's. And I will say I've been to plenty of Love's. I've never stayed at one. They always have clean bathrooms. I can't say that.
There's always food you can go in and get. That you're going to be able to fill up. It's probably going to be close to the interstate.
Right.
It's probably checking a lot of boxes that, as you said, if you're not differentiating on experience, that can become a major selling point, because Love's has the convenience, it is the price, it kind of has all the things needed to convince that stopover traveler that it's actually going to be worth it for them to want to stop and stay there and make that a regular part of their travel journey. And I think that's how Love's has been able to build journey, mainly on convenience, on the cleanliness, and on price.
Right. For me, it's the clean bathroom, right? Especially now that I'm a rooftop tenter that does not come with your own bathroom facilities. So clean bathroom, enjoyable shower experience is of the utmost importance. And, that's kind of the make or break with a lot of campgrounds these days is nasty bathroom, dirty floors, careful about not touching your towel to the floor, or where am I going to put my clothes when I'm showering? Love's has thought of all of that, and they make sure it's a good experience. They make sure people are in there regularly checking the bathrooms to make sure they're clean. It's a predictable experience, and it's the way to get to the destination, and avoid any disasters on the way.
Yeah, really well said. And Matt, finally, to wrap things up here, I mentioned it a little bit in the opening, and obviously most folks who listen to the show regularly know I like to end things with a little bit of data. We haven't talked a lot about the RVIA data here over the last couple of weeks, but I mentioned that, 4th of July is coming up. This is arguably, the second or third largest holiday that camping and glamping operators have to capitalize on the summer season. RVIA estimates that over 7 million people are going to go camping coming up here in the 4th of July. But we kind of see that as, look, that's a strong number if that holds true for what RVIA forecasts there. But we see the wholesale shipment numbers decline. And, this is a pretty, I would say, fair decline in the month of May after experiencing all really positive growth across the board, or at least, flat growth over the first kind of quarter of the year. Matt, a lot of this is coming in travel trailers. This is the big bulk of the data that we see as far as the drop off that's been occurring. And then there's some obviously in Class A motorhomes that's about, I think, 3 to 4% down this month from previous year. The real question I want to pose as we look at this, especially now that we're kind of right on halfway through the year. Obviously, in a few days here, we'll close out the month of June. So 6 out of the 12 months of the year will be gone at this point, and obviously June data will be coming soon. Is this alarming or concerning at all, or does this kind of mark a shift that maybe people are purchasing their RVs in a different way? Especially as I look back at the data that we've seen already, February, March, and even a little bit into April. It seemed like the numbers were really, really positive as far as, people buying RVs maybe a little bit sooner than they have in the past. Maybe it was that tariff anticipation. Maybe it was anticipation of market conditions. Like, who knows, maybe what's driven that? Or do you think that those things, as I talked about, tariffs, market conditions, people not wanting to take on new debt, has that played a role in the numbers that we're seeing here from RVIA and the wholesale shipments that are being reported?
A couple takeaways. This is a volatile market. I wouldn't
always
say
has been.
Not, and then that's specifically to the RV sales unit, right? There's tons of RVs on the road. There's tons of demand for RV sites and campgrounds. I don't see that changing anytime soon. You see these big fluctuations, but compared to the number of RV sites and the number of RVs out there, it's a drop in the bucket. So my main takeaway is that this is a volatile market. It's unpredictable. I don't think, changes are indicative of, and they are to some degree, but there's always context. And I think some of the context here is that, and we always have this disclaimer that these are wholesale shipment numbers. These are not retail sales.
Right.
So we've reported kind of like disjointed wholesale and retail numbers in the past. And I think that's kind of happening here. And I think we've seen increases year over year from January, through
right. Yeah.
May.
Let me put this chart back on as we're talking about it. As you can see kind of the blue line on the lower graph that's up here represents the 2025 monthly shipments, whereas the kind of yellow or gold figure is 2024.
Right.
And as I talked about, you look at March, you look at April, numbers are fairly good, particularly in March. March, I would say, well outperformed 2024. And I think again that might have been some dealer anticipation happening there, saying, look, like we want to stock up on shipments. We're unsure of how these tariffs or maybe other things are going to start to affect the price of some of these units we're getting. And we're going to plan and prepare for this. And as you said, I think RV lots look full. And there's a lot of campers, as we kind of reported as well, that, look, 7 million people potentially going to go camping 4th of July. RVIA is still predicting 44 million people plan to take a camping trip this year. Those are really strong retail and consumer figures that I would say kind of go a little bit against some of these monthly shipment numbers.
Yeah. And I think if you look at those monthly numbers, and it tells a story that the dealers overbought,
Right.
early, and now they're pulling back. We'll see the retail numbers come out, and we'll do a comparison, but I don't think it's hugely indicative of any, obviously there's volatility in the market with the tariffs and politics and all that, but I don't put too much weight on it in terms of, it's a volatile consumer market. The interest rates are volatile on these kind of consumer loans, and just the way it is.
Yeah, really well said. All right, Matt, with that, I think we will wrap up the show today and let you get back to some work. Obviously, you went through a laundry list of an intro here with things happening at the property. Really excited to, for folks to see more of the photos and see some of these things come to life after a lot of the great work you put in this week. And obviously, we got about 1 week until the 4th of July holiday kicks in. We'll be back here next week, right before 4th of July, as it heats up for many Americans, having barbecues, taking road trips, and really getting into the great outdoors. And as a reminder, make sure to catch all the other editions of the show over this next week. We've had some really great episodes come out on our GMH Europe, and GMH Hotel crew that do their versions of Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, respectively. And with that, Matt and I will see you back here next Thursday for another great show. Thanks, guys. Bye, Matt.
See ya.